All right, we're rolling.
All right. So welcome and thank you for attending the May 2nd, 2023 virtual public meeting to discuss the Arlington Career Center use permit. My name is Olivia Sontag and I'm with the Arlington County Planning Division, and I'm the planner reviewing this proposed use permit. So welcome to all of you joining us remotely today. I also have with us today several other staff members who will be available to answer questions. Those include Rob Gibson from DES, Bethany Heim from our DPR, and then Brett Wallace, Chris Kreider, and Laura Schaub from our urban design team. So I know we've all been doing this for a while, but just before we begin, we're just going to reorient everyone to Teams so that we make sure everyone can use the features during the Q&A session. So today's meeting is available to stream from the county website via a Microsoft Teams link. There's also a dial-in by phone option for those who wish to use it or are having connectivity issues. So if you do lose internet connectivity during the meeting, we do advise that you rejoin by phone. During the meeting, please keep your video turned off and your microphone muted until you're called on. These tools are located as icons on your toolbar, and if you don't see the toolbar, just try tapping or clicking on the center of your screen and it should pop up. All public comments must be shared verbally for the record. When called upon to speak, you must unmute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon. We won't have the ability to unmute you, and if you're dialing in by phone, just press *6 to unmute. And then when you're finished speaking, please remute your microphone. So lastly, this is a public forum. Today's meeting will be recorded and posted to the county website. All information associated with today's meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to the Freedom of Information Act requirements. And again, the purpose of today's meeting is to provide an update on the proposal, provide a forum for attendees to ask questions, and provide constructive comments. I'll first provide an overview of the project schedule, and then the applicant will make a brief presentation on the proposal. We'll save all questions for the second half of the meeting. And our goal is to reserve most of the meeting today for that public discussion. And we do have the applicant team from APS and county staff ready to answer any questions. So with that, the agenda will include a schedule overview, the applicant presentation, which for today's purposes will focus on campus circulation, parking, streetscape improvements, and the phasing plans. If you'd like to join us again tomorrow at noon, we'll be focusing on trees, play areas, just overall urban design and architecture. And then again, the second half of the meeting will be reserved for public Q&A. If you do have questions, either any issues throughout the meeting or any follow-up questions that you'd like to ask after the meeting, this is my contact information, and feel free to just send me an email with your questions. So just a quick overview of the use permit being proposed. Up here in the corner, you'll see an aerial image of the site today, and then below that, a site plan that the applicant has proposed, and we'll go over in much more detail today. But just to kind of outline the components of this use permit, they're proposing a 5-story new career center with about 1,600 student capacity, a 4-tier above grade garage with about 345 spaces, partial demolition of the existing career center to make room for that above grade garage, demolition of the Fenwick building. That permit has been submitted and the issuance is anticipated sometime in the summer. They're proposing a central curbless plaza that would be limited just to buses during pickup and drop off, and then pedestrians and students during the day. A synthetic turf field. This is not a regulation size, but will be used for students for PE and other activities during the day. A variety of MPSA play area improvements around the site, and then some general streetscape and site improvements, and then a couple modifications, including for parking, height, and then setbacks. So the schedule, as of today, here we are at the May 2nd and 3rd virtual public meetings. Upcoming, we have on May 10th, we have the Form-Based Code Advisory Working Group meeting, our next PFRC meeting on May 17th, and then we'll be visiting several other commissions, including C2E2, the Parks and Rec, Transportation, and Planning Commission, tentatively on these dates, with a target of the June 10th or 13th county board hearing. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to the applicant team. And Steve and Jasmine, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves and anyone else you have with you on the team today.
Great, thanks, Olivia. Steve Stricker, Senior Project Manager with Arlington Public Schools. Arlington Public Schools is the applicant, of course. Working on the design on our behalf is Stantec Architects, and we have the principal from Stantec with us today, Jasmine McDuffie, who's also the project architect. So Jasmine is going to start off on the presentation, and then once she's done with her part, I'll present the phasing plan for the project.
Okay, thank you, Steve, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to start off with just a project overview and just a reminder that the design that you'll be presenting today reflects the approved requirements from the school board back in October of 2022. And then Olivia touched on many of these, but these are the kind of project requirements, the capacity, project costs, and the building size. In terms of project schedule, just an overview. In terms of where we are now, we have completed schematic design and are in design development, and also are in this use permit process. And this is virtual meeting number 1. The pre-construction for this project will be around October, but before that, as Olivia mentioned, we'll be working towards a June board submission. And then right now, the anticipated school board construction contract approval would be in November of 2023. In terms of the construction, that would begin right now December of 2023 and would end the summer of 2027, with the new ACC being completed of December of 2025. And the phasing plans will walk you through more information on that phasing. This is the overall site campus. Just to orient you, this top of the page is South Highland Street. To the left is 9th Street South. To the right, 7th Street. And on the bottom of the page is South Wateree Drive. These areas in blue represent enlargements of the campus that we're going to show you later on in the presentation. I want to talk a little bit about circulation on the site. As Olivia mentioned, this is a curbless environment, and so vehicles will be limited to buses, service vehicles, and vehicles that service the automotive program. The buses that you see on the diagram shown in orange represent arrival and departure areas that would not, just to clarify, the buses for MPSA and the existing and new career center wouldn't be on site at the same time. So the bus routes are shown in blue in terms of the new ACC, as well as the MPSA bus route would come around off of South Highland. And we also are showing anticipated pedestrian paths, not only located around the campus on the major streets, but also circulation paths within the campus, both from the garage, which you can see those purple paths leading from the garage to the main campus, as well as paths that would be to main entrances, both to the existing ACC, new ACC, both on the main entrance and on the 7th Street entrance. We also have entrances for the teen parenting program and early childhood program here. The campus will also be bike friendly, and so there's anticipated that bikes will also be using the curbless environment, and those bike paths are shown in green. We recognize that there's, our goal is for this to be a curbless environment, but there will still be some vehicular traffic, and so we're looking at ways to make the pedestrian experience really safe. And so looking at introducing speed tables where we anticipate pedestrians would cross, shown in the pink, but also identifying for ADA locations where it would be safe for pedestrians to cross with raised truncated domes to identify the crossing areas. We're also studying campus lighting and how that coordinates with the street lighting. Right now, this is a diagram. It doesn't necessarily reflect the final fixture count, as that needs to be coordinated with calculations for lighting levels. But we are looking at providing new lighting for the street lighting to match the county standard in pink, and introducing pole lighting on campus that's represented in blue. And there are going to be some areas, some pedestrian paths that would be better served, we think, with lighting that would be mounted on the building. And those are represented in this dashed red line, both at the garage, along the existing ACC, and along the new ACC near the zoning and BSA. This is an enlargement of the new ACC entrance and existing library entrance, showing the updates to that library pedestrian experience and the entrance to the building. This section, if you were to cut a section through the site looking from this point, looking towards South Highland, you see the elevation of the new ACC, the libraries here, and you can see the new trees that are being proposed. There's trees along the entire perimeter of the new work, along the new ACC and the library and the existing ACC. These images here are president image. They don't reflect the actual design, but they represent the character of what some of these bio-retention areas that are shown around the building could take on. This is a three-dimensional view. If you were standing at the bus entrance off of South Walter Reed, looking towards the new main entrance of the new ACC, you can also see the library, the portico that's existing there here. And this is an aerial view of the same location, again, with and without buses. This is an enlargement of the site near 7th Street, 7th and South Walter Reed Drive. And this is the entrance of the building off of 7th. The building is pushed back off of 7th Street to provide some additional green space here. There's also a lot here for the a playground area for the teen parenting program. And bioretention areas that are located along South Walter Reed Drive to capture stormwater, rainwater collection. Again, some pedestrian, some present images of what these spaces could take on, but these don't reflect the actual design. These are some three-dimensional views of the 7th Street entrance. If you're standing on the corner of 7th and South Walter Reed Drive, this is the entrance to the new ACC. And this is if you were looking at the same corner down towards the library. So that new sidewalk and streetscape. These represent steep trees that we are considering for the project. This is an enlargement of the new field. So South Highland Street is located at the top of the page. This is the existing ACC, new ACC. And this image shows the new field that's being proposed, synthetic turf field, that Olivia mentioned in her introduction. We're also looking at providing what we're calling a tree bosque area here. It's a shaded area of trees, canopy trees. And you can see, again, these are not reflecting of the actual design, but of the character of that type of experience. And these are some three-dimensional views. Looking back towards that grove of trees. And this is a view looking at the corner of the new ACC right here. These are sectional views. If you were drawing a section through the campus site here, through the automotive section, you would see this, the automotive cars. There's a screen wall that's also shown in three-dimensional views here to screen that service yard for vehicles, and the grove of trees for shading on campus. This section is cut further south and cuts through this bioretention seeding wall planting area here, which is also reflected here. This is a view if you're standing on South Highland Street looking back towards the new ACC. the existing ACC is here, and then your field, the new field is located here. There's a 4-foot high fence around the majority of the field. However, along South Highland Street, the height of the fence gets larger to make sure that balls stay within the field. And these are some additional views. This is an enlargement of the existing ACC. And then you have the new ACC, the libraries at this corner. And so a couple of sectional views, one kind of through the library, you can see that represented here, the library profile building, some additional planting, bioretention areas, the width of the street, and the new trees. And this section is cut a little further north, and you see both the trees that are along the field edge, or sorry, the bioretention areas along the existing ACC, which are represented here. Some three-dimensional views, again, looking at the field, you see the 4-foot high fence. This is the view from the existing ACC looking towards the new ACC. And some additional aerial views looking back at the field, the new ACC, both with and without buses. This is an enlargement of the site at the corner of South Highland and 9th Street. You see the garage footprint. The entrance to the garage is about midway along 9th Street. And we pulled the garage edge back off of South Highland to provide some additional landscaping and trees to screen that garage. We've also added some trees along the garage facade here to screen the garage as well. And this is a sectional view. If you were to stand here and look towards 7th Street, this is the profile of the garage, and this is the profile of the trees that are being proposed at that corner. And Steve, I'll turn it over to you for phasing.
Great, thanks, Jasmine. Give me a minute to share my screen. Let me know when folks can see that.
We can see it.
Great, thanks. Okay, so running through the phasing plans here real quick, starting off with the existing conditions. You'll note there's points of interest at the bottom of each slide, so I'll try to touch on those. For the existing conditions, we have 150 parking spaces currently. Our goal is to maintain that amount of parking either on-site or with a combination of on-site and designated off-site. Of course, we got the 2 existing bus loops, one for existing ACC that runs west to east, buses in on Highland, out on Walter Reed, and a separate bus loop for Montessori that runs east to west, buses in on Walter Reed, and currently out on Highland. Majority of pickup and drop off designated spaces is off of Highland, although we do recognize that that does happen on other perimeter streets and even on site at times. So let's go to phase 1A. And I do want to note for all of these phases, you'll see a caveat under the phase description that basically indicates that the phasing and logistics plan is subject to change. Keep in mind that we are in the middle of design, so there is still some design progression to occur. There's permitting that needs to occur. Obviously, once we get a contractor on board, there are certain contractor means and methods that will play into the phasing. And of course, as we go through construction, there's also unforeseen conditions that we will undoubtedly run up against that may have impact on the phasing plan. So there's 2 sub-phases, phase 1A and phase 1B, that need to occur prior to the phase 2, which is the phase that constructs the main project. And these sub-phases actually basically clear the footprint of where the new building will be located. So phase 1A is for the Montessori Public School of Arlington play area relocation. Currently, there's some play areas that will be within the building footprint on the northeast corner of the site. Those are being relocated to around the perimeter of the existing MPSA building. So that'll clear up that area of the site. We're looking to start the play fields directly east of the Montessori building sometime in the month of May. Still going through some permitting and procurement issues with regard to that, but we'd like to start that work early because there's a natural grass play field where my cursor is that we'd like to give as much time to grow in before we turn that area over to the school in the fall. So that work for MPSA is essentially a summer project with early start sometime in May. The existing play areas that you see on the east side of the existing MPSA will stay in place over the summer while we're doing this work. And those will be removed at the time that we have a contractor on board to actually execute construction of the new ACC project. We are also, as part of this work, are reconfiguring the parking lot, the existing parking lot, for two reasons. One is to accommodate the buses and the bus traffic that'll be required as part of the next phase that I'll show you, which is phase 1B, and also to be able to maintain the parking counts that we're looking to achieve throughout the project. Street parking really not affected by the phase 1A project, although there will be a period of time when might be a couple parking spaces needed on the school side on Highland Street as we do some demo work and some construction work on the play areas on the west side of the Montessori building. So I'm going to move to phase 1B. Phase 1B is also largely a summer project, although it may trickle into the fall a bit with the demolition of the existing Fenwick building. Again, this is on the footprint of the new ACC construction, so that building's got to be removed. You can see the limits of construction around Fenwick actually dictate that we make these changes in the parking lot. So for example, the Montessori bus loop, actually, we cut that access off straight through to Walter Reed. So that bus loop for Montessori will now be in and out off of Highland Street, traversing this U-shaped bus loop. Similarly, for existing ACC, although we're not changing the direction of the bus loop here, we are reducing it because of the limits of construction. So there'll be a single lane that goes through the portico, the current portico of the library. And to accomplish that, there are several islands that get removed here to make a little bit straighter bus path through the site. Those islands are also removed to add some additional parking to maintain that parking count. As I said, schedule for this is primarily over the summer, may continue into the fall a bit. Pickup and drop off, really for this phase, no real impact. As I said, on-site parking, we actually get an increase here with removal of some of the islands to 159 spaces from the 150 in the current setup. And really no street parking impact. The impact with regard to the right-of-way is really non-existent in this phase either, as the limits of construction fencing for the Fenwick demo will leave the sidewalk open on the school side of South Walter Reed Drive. So that takes us into phase 2, which is the construction of the new 5-story Career Center building. The construction start is currently scheduled for early 2024. It's a 2-year construction period. You'll notice that the bus loops basically remain in that same configuration that we looked at during the previous phase, where we reconfigured those over the summer. Pickup drop-off, really no impact except for the frontage along South Walter Reed. If there was any pickup drop-off happening there, that will actually be closed down for we're hoping both the bike lane and the parking lane in order to allow us to have a delivery entrance here and to be able to actually construct the building from the South Walter Reed side of the site. On-site parking does get reduced in this phase. We're down to about 103 spaces. And as a result of that, to get back to that 150 number, we're looking at leasing 50 additional spaces, possibly at the ECDC garage where we currently lease 100 spaces. And if we can't get them there, we'll have to look at other options. Street parking, I did mention that we lose the street parking along the frontage of the project on South Walter Reed Drive there. There is quite a bit of work within the right-of-way associated with this phase. For one thing, adjacent to the project, all of the streetscape along South Walter Reed and the 7th Street frontage of the project will occur during this phase. So that's a new sidewalk, new street trees, new street lights, and basically a whole new streetscape there. There is also county complete streets work along the entirety of South Walter Reed from, I think it's from 6th Street all the way to Columbia Pike, that will be occurring during this phase. In addition to that, there is a large stormwater pipe, underground stormwater pipe that currently runs across the site here that needs to be relocated into the street, into the right-of-way, to allow us to proceed to phase 3 of the project. So let's move to that phase. Phase 3 of the project is the construction of the 4-story parking garage. And so once the new Career Center facility is built and we move the existing program over to that new building, we're then able to demolish the shops on the south side of the existing ACC building to allow construction of the 4-story parking garage at the southwest corner of the site. So during this phase, and this phase, by the way, takes place obviously once the new Career Center building is done. So essentially from January of 26, about a 1.5-year project, until essentially May of 27. Parking on the site during this time actually increases because we are able to move off of the site the relocatable classrooms that are currently there. So our parking actually increases to 172 spaces on site. You'll notice the bus loops essentially stays the same for MPSA. For the new ACC, it's still a one-way bus loop, but now we're changing direction, coming in on Walter Reed so that the drop-off for new ACC is on the right side, and coming out, exiting on Highland Street. Pickup and drop-off, no impact for MPSA during this phase, and we've also basically allowed now for pickup drop-off off of South Walter Reed. Street parking impacts, obviously the area adjacent to the site on 9th Street and Highland will definitely have some impacts, especially on 9th. Most likely, again, we'll be taking the bike lane and the parking lane as part of our limits of construction in order to actually construct the garage, particularly on 9th where it's pretty close to the street. And of course, work within the right-of-way would also encompass streetscape work that would be adjacent to the limits of construction for this phase. So again, that's new sidewalk, new street lights, new street trees. So that allows us to move to phase 4 once the garage is built. And once we're able to take occupancy of the garage and start parking there, that frees up the space on site that was currently surface parking. That's no longer needed. So that turns into an artificial turf field. And that also allows us during this phase to complete the repaving of the bus loops and to finish up any other site work on site. You'll notice that the bus loops largely retain the same circulation pattern as we had for the previous phase. On-site parking, of course, increases with the new 4-story parking garage. We're planning on building that out to 360 spaces, although that's still subject to negotiation under the terms of the use permit. And then right-of-way work during this phase would be any streetscape work adjacent to the construction zone here off of Highland Street. And also, finally, the mill and overlay of any perimeter streets that would be associated with the work as dictated by the use permit. So I think that's it, Olivia, for the phasing plan. I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Jasmine, for that presentation. I know that was a lot of information, and some of the slides were a little bit difficult to read, but we will have that information posted on the project webpage. I'll go ahead and paste the link to that in the chat. So we'll get all of that information posted after the meeting. During the Q&A, we'll also have these slides available to pull up again if there are specific questions about those. So with that, we're going to go ahead and officially move on to the Q&A portion of the meeting. We'll have just under 30 minutes. I don't see any dial-in participants. So for everyone joining via Teams, we're going to ask that you please use the raise hand function if you'd like to offer a comment. And I see that there may already be a raised hand or two in the chat. So I'll call on you in order of when you raise your hand. And then if you posted a comment in the chat that wasn't answered during the presentation, please raise your hand and repeat it again when called upon. And then given the volume of the participants today, we're going to ask that you try to keep your initial comments and questions to 1 minute, and then we'll circle back around again if we have additional time.
Olivia, this is Jeff Chambers. Do you want me to go through the, I don't think anything was answered in the chat during, would you like me to go through the chat questions and then maybe it answers some of the questions people have their hands raised on?
Sure, we can start with that, Jeff.
Okay, well, I'll start there with the first question was, will the bus loop be available for use by transit bus if it's decided to put an ACC or a stop on the ACC campus? At this point in time, we hadn't considered that. As part of the complete streets, there will be new bus stops created on South Walter Reed, which may take care of it, but it is something that could be considered down the road because it is intended for buses, mostly for school buses, but that's something to be considered or conversed on down the road. Bike parking is throughout the site. It's in multiple locations. Where possible, we are looking to locate the bike parking under building overhangs. Some would be covered and some will not be covered, but it would be all over the site. So it will cover the use of the buildings as well as afternoon and weekend events. That is the intent of our spacing of that. Question was asked, how was the number of parking spaces determined? It was an extensive traffic study by a traffic consultant. That's where the number of spaces was determined and how it was determined. And there is a copy of that is included in the website for the project if you want to look at more detail in that. Drop off of children for the child care program. And essentially there will be access from 7th Street. There'll be a sidewalk. There'll be a sidewalk also from the campus so that it can be reached multiple different ways. But we will be working with the county for time restricted parking on 7th and on Walter Reed. Once that program opens, there will also be, as I said, bike parking on multiple places on the site, and some of those will be near the child care entrance. So that should be taken care of. But thank you for the question. During construction, what's the anticipated disruption of MPSA with regard to outdoor access. We're hoping as little as possible. Construction can be dirty, but the contractor is required to maintain or monitor their dust and to keep dust down. That's actually a requirement of building in the county. But we will be constantly monitoring that and work on that. But the intent is they are able to use their outdoor play areas and the new playgrounds that we're putting in around the building. So it is intended that they are able to have outdoor access as well as the koi pond and their environmental areas. Can there be a protected bike lane at Walter Reed as part of this project? Again, we're working with Complete Streets. There will be a protected bike lane that will be created as part of this. The details are still being finalized, but this project is coordinating. We are having full coordination with the county with regard to that and how it gets built and what the phasing will be to do that. As far as another question is maximizing the potential height we can put on this lot. We believe we are maximizing it to the extent we can. There are limitations on the height of an educational building. This will be 5 stories above grade to the highest portion of the building, which is similar to the Heights building up in Roslyn. What will the sports field be large enough for? Essentially, the new turf field is essentially being set up or designed for physical education use for the Career Center. The board has currently committed to removing the existing MPSA building following the completion of this project. And at that time, they're planning on moving that into the existing Career Center. And the board's current direction is to look at providing green space and/or field in the location of the existing MPSA. So there will be a larger field, we believe, in the future, as the board has currently provided direction for. But yes, as far as the existing field, it's for PE, and it will also be able to use for younger children's soccer. We're also looking at allowing T-ball to be played there with the way the fencing is being configured. So it's a multi-use field for multiple things, but it is not a full-size field. 9th Street is noted to be a bicycle boulevard, providing only access for people biking on the north side of Columbia Pike. How will people be able to bike safely on 9th Street South with the entrance to the garage on that street? Again, we are working with the county with regard to that. We are aware it is a bike boulevard, and we are coordinating with the county on how that gets configured. We are looking at options for how that is addressed, and one possibility is looking at bike lanes, shared bike lanes, etc. So that has not been definitely decided at this point, but we are continuing to work through that. Question was with regard about the 150 spaces. I think during Steve's portion of the presentation, when he notes the number of parking spaces, it's what is available at the time. And it's not just those covered by the learning cottages. So what is noted on the phasing plans is what is available. And I think, as you noted, there's different numbers that are available, and at times we're going to have to be looking at getting additional off-site spaces. Next comment is with regard to the dismay of hearing construction noise for 4 years. 2 questions that were asked with that is, why will buses enter and exit from South Highland? It's already noisy and busy and smaller street than Walter Reed. Also, currently before and after school, the Montessori school is terrible. Parents park in driveways, hydrants, and sometimes double park. Have you accounted for this traffic? Yes, we do believe that we've looked at traffic studies and how this will work. And we believe we're not making it any worse than it currently is with regard to using South Highland in the long term, and hopefully as much as possible in the short term. We are working on those traffic movements. The buses are not constant, and there's not a huge amount of buses. We do understand that, but we are looking at all of the traffic as part of this planned layout. Specify how many parking spaces are within that's within the open lot, and how many you'll have inside the built garage. We are currently are maintaining approximately 250 spaces in the surface lot, as plus the lease spaces that cover the current staff that are in the buildings as they currently operate. And the intent is to maintain that during construction with a mix of off-site and on-site spaces, as was noted in the phasing plans. The final garage at this point, we've requested 360 spaces in the four-story garage. Again, that will be vetted and fully determined as part of the use permit approval. Are you removing access to the library from Walter Reed? No, we are not. There will still be access from Walter Reed to the library throughout the process. If you close the southbound lane on Walter Reed, what accommodation are you providing for people biking south? Can you provide a temporary two-way cycle track on the east side of Walter Reed? It is being determined what is going to happen. There will be some phased construction. I think we are looking at options for bike lanes, whether it can be a two-way on the east side of the street, or whether there are two lanes that are provided. Again, that is all being determined and coordinated, but it is part of the conversation. Will the southbound protected bike lane on Walter Reed be finished when the new ACC is opened in phase 3? Yes, we are intending that the complete streets work, whatever the final configuration is, will be completed when the new ACC building opens. Not only serves the community, it also serves the APS students. What is supposed to be the flow between the new garage and the ACC building? Will there be a new path through the existing ACC, or question mark? Essentially, we are looking at a walkway along the north end of the ACC building, as well as the sidewalk on Highland. For staff, there would be the option of going through the existing ACC building is a possibility. We haven't fully explored that yet, and how the building will be going under some renovations following this project. It may not be fully available, but once the building is open and as a renovated MPSA building, if that's the direction that it goes, APS staff should be able to walk through the existing building. Security reasons, public would not be able to do that. So they would either have to walk along the top or on the west side of the existing building on Highland Street, or you can actually come around the front from the garage as well, and walk down 9th Street to Walter Reed and up to the main entrances of the building. How many bike parking spaces are planned near the ACC and near the MPSA? Again, that is determined by the population, and we will be working with the county to come up with the final number of spaces. It's part of our use permit requirements. We haven't necessarily specifically got it into the cargo bikes and bikes with trailers, but we will be having that conversation with the county. Will bike parking that allows for charging of e-bikes and bike accessories? Well, we don't have that in the conversation now, but we will have to look into that. For MPSA, will there be considerations? Sorry, keep getting a pop-up. For MPSA, will there be considerations to putting in better air filtration inside the school, even with monitored dust levels? young children would be significantly impacted by air quality. We will be looking at filtration. We currently have higher filtration in all of our buildings since COVID, and it's still running with portable air filters and more regular filter changes. We have also in the MPSA building increased the MERV of the filters that are in the building. But we would be monitoring that during construction, just as we do in any of our buildings when construction is happening nearby. What are the hours of construction work, and will it be continue on the weekends? Again, it will follow the county's noise ordinance. And typically we don't like to work on weekends, but sometimes that there will be some weekend hours. But again, they will follow the county's noise ordinance. What happens to the library parking during the various phases? We have to maintain the parking as part of our lease agreement with the county. So we will be coordinating those locations as to where they are during the various phases. So I think that covers the current questions, Olivia. So
Yes, thank you, Jeff. We'll jump to those with their hands raised at this time. We can go back to the chat in a little bit, but I just want to recognize first Brian Sigritz.
Great. Thank you. Wasn't sure if Jillian was up first, but yeah, I'll try to keep my comments brief. So I represent the Arlington Heights Civic Association, serving as co-president. And I first should note that we've long been supportive of APS here in Arlington Heights, and we currently have more schools located within our neighborhood than any other neighborhood. So we're supportive of the project, but we do have several concerns. And I know I've laid these out previously in a letter, but to quickly discuss some of our concerns. We remain concerned about the lack of green space or open space for this project overall. And a lot of this is tied to the fact that there'll be the 3 physical buildings remaining in the final use permit. So with the current MPA building, the current Montessori building, the current Career Center building, and the old Career Center building. So we would like to see the use permit modified to show green space where the current Montessori building is, and to account for it moving to the existing Career Center building. Without that green space where the current Montessori building is, we're really going to be limiting the amount of green space on this site. And the existing green space of this building is widely used by apartment buildings across the street, and both our neighborhood and the Penrose neighborhood. So a lot of our concerns revolve around the fact that lack of green space in the 3 buildings remaining. We also have concerns about the adequacy of the sidewalk width, some of the streetscaping, and especially on the corner of 7th and Highland. That area is really not going to be much done in the current plan, so we'd like to see some changes there as well. And our one final concern is about the fence height, being a 6-foot fence around much of that area in 7th and Highland. We believe a 4-foot fence is adequate. So I'll stop there and allow others to chime in, but just wanted to lay out some of our primary concerns, and happy to discuss any of these further later. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian, and thanks for submitting that letter. We'll go to Amy H.
Hi there. You guys mentioned that 7th Street, there would be time restricted parking along the school site. And I'm wondering, is that on the residential side as well, or along the school side only?
I don't know that it's fully determined. The county controls the streets, so we will make requests, and the county will sign it accordingly. So at this point in time, we generally look at the school side of the street because we want to have safe entry to the building and the safe leaving cars. We aren't trying to encourage people to cross the street, especially with students. I see Rob's popped up, so I'll turn it over to him.
Hi there, Robert Gibson with Arlington County DES Transportation. So APS has not requested or identified requests for changes to the parking on the north side of 7th at this time. And as Jeff mentioned, we typically keep the operational management around the schools to the school side of the street as opposed to across the street. But we do envision that as part of this process and as the site evolves, that DES would evaluate and make changes to parking along the site frontage as each phase of the project is built out and delivered.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Michael. Michael, did you still have a question? It looks like you put your hand down. If not, we'll go back to Jillian.
Thank you very much, Jillian Burgess, founder of Safe Streets Are For Everyone. Thank you, or safety. I really appreciate the presentation and all the thought that has gone into this planning at this very complicated site. It's clear that you guys are dealing with a lot of moving pieces and that you're really trying to make it work. It's also clear that you've spent a lot of time and energy thinking about cars and buses at this site, but it sounds like from the presentation and especially the answers to the questions that you've thought less about bikes. And I worry a little bit that when you're putting bikes as an afterthought and therefore you're going to get really substandard facilities for bikes. This is an area, this school more than any other is going to see a ton of trips because of the part-time nature of some of the classes. And it's also centrally located in the county, serving high school students. This is prime location and a prime school to be well served by public transit and by bikes. But if you don't plan for it, you're not gonna get it. And so things like e-bikes, secure, covered parking that allows for charging is very important for staff and for students. Parking that allows for cargo bikes and longer wheelbase bikes, which are becoming more popular. And then parking that is located in places that make sense, that don't require people to navigate around all of the bus circulation at the end of the school day, for example. All of that is super important. And then, of course, the childcare drop-off, that looks like it's sort of buried a little bit in the site, and it might be hard to get to, particularly on a bike. You might be forcing people on larger bikes onto very small sidewalks, which is a bad combination. So I just encourage you to think harder about that. And if you have any questions or if you need any help, safety is here and happy to help. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jillian. I want to give Steve and or Jeff a chance to respond really quick, and then we have about 3 more comments I'd like to get to within the next 5 minutes.
Yeah, Jillian, I'm sorry if I gave the impression we haven't thought about it. We've thought pretty heavily about it. We just don't have all of the details worked out, so I'm not going to say where things are, where I don't know where they are specifically. We don't have the final layouts of all of the sidewalks and areas, and currently the bike areas we're just showing at locations essentially at this point in time, but we do have to work that out. But we've had, I would say, many hours of conversations with regard to bikes, e-bikes, et cetera, and where that could go and where it will go. But yes, thank you for your comments, and we are taking that into consideration.
And Jeff, just to add to your points, Arlington County is doing a complete multimodal repositioning of South Walter Reed. That does include the protected bike lanes as part of the plan there. And as APS discussed, they're working with us to coordinate the build out of that with the new ACC. On 9th Street, which is a bicycle boulevard, we're working with APS. We've identified a number of solutions and we'll provide details on the recommendations with the upcoming public hearings for the Transportation Commission and Planning Commission. So we've very much been thinking about bikes and transit as it relates to this. But those that thought process has in many cases focused around the public streets and the broad public use of those transportation systems. With APS's fundamental repositioning of the interior of this site away from vehicle access to support pedestrian, school bus, and bike circulation.
Thanks, Rob. We'll jump to Eileen.
Thanks. So I think the use permit should be revised to include the demolishment of the Montessori school. I'd like to know when that will be demolished and how long it will take. To say that there's 4 years of construction going to 2007 and not including demolishment of the Montessori school, I think is a bad idea. And I would like to ask, what do schools think the I don't know, the actual life expectancy of the current ACC building is, and what are they planning the life expectancy for the new building? Thanks.
Jeff and Steve.
Sure. I think that unfortunately, until the board acts and we have something in our CIP, I can't definitively put into our use permit request the demolition of a building and spending the school board's money before they do it themselves. As far as a life expectancy of the existing ACC, the ACC is a solid building. Structurally, it is a very sound building and could last for quite a long time. Within the last 10 years, the HVAC system has been reworked, replaced. And actually, when we did our evaluations during COVID, was actually functioning very well as far as air changes and air quality. So I would believe that the building itself will have a decent life expectancy. Generally, systems are good for 25 to 35 years. We would be looking at doing some major work within that building to change a secondary building to an elementary building. But again, that will have to be looked at as part of our next CIP, and I believe the superintendent will have something in his CIP for that. Generally, what you look at in a new building is again, you've got a lot of embodied carbon, so you want to make it last as long as you can. Generally, I would not look at it as a disposable building. We are building the new building with concrete for acoustical reasons as well as durability. And the building itself, generally in 25 to 35 years, you start looking at finishes and/or systems that need replacement, refurbishment, and upgrading. So generally every 25 to 35 years, there would be a major or minor renovation of the building to maintain its life, but it should last at least a century or more. A concrete structure building like that could last quite a long time.
All right, thanks, Jeff. And we are at time, but this meeting is being recorded, so I think we're going to go ahead and answer the remaining questions in the chat. I think we've addressed all hands that are raised. Eileen, I think that hand is just remaining from your last question. So really quickly, Randy had a question about what happens to library parking during the various phases. And Jeff, I'll ask you to answer that one.
He did answer that.
I did answer that, but we will be
Okay.
maintaining library parking because it's required in our lease with the county.
All right, great. And then there was a question about what's the maximum amount of spaces that could fit into this new garage, and is the current 4-story height maximum and on par with the parking garage to its south? Jeff?
I think that generally it's very close to that. I think we could fit a couple more spaces, but we are actually planning that structure for the potential future charging for electric cars, if that's possible, as well as e-bikes and whatnot would be in there. We have no current way for us to provide that. We envision a third party in the future and are providing provisions for that to happen. We will also have parking for staff bikes as we are required as our TDM requirements under the use permit. So there are multiple things that are happening beyond vehicles in the garage. I don't know what the number of spaces. I believe the garage that we are creating is actually got more spaces than the ECDC garage on the other side of 9th Street, if that was the question.
Okay, great. And I think the final question was asking, is there a transportation demand management plan for the finished campus?
There will be a TDM for the entire campus as it is completed as part of this current project.
All right, and just
Sorry,
looking.
can you just clarify, do you mean it will be developed as part of this project to be implemented when it's completed, or do you mean it will be developed when it's completed?
Basically, we will have a TDM for this campus with the existing MPSA building, the existing ACC, and the new ACC on site based on the number of students.
But when is that plan developed? Now?
That plan is being developed right now, and it will be a requirement of this use permit for that site with it developed that way. Should a change happen in the future, then there will be an amendment to the use permit.
So that will come out with the presentation to the commissions,
Yes.
presumably? Okay, great, thanks.
Okay, great. I think that covers all of the questions in the chat. There were a couple comments about the height of the fences at the Montessori school, but those will be included in this recording. So thank you again for participating today, and please join us again tomorrow for a presentation and discussion that's focused more on trees, play areas, urban design, and the site architecture. These presentations and all the materials shared at past and future meetings will be posted on the project webpage, which I shared in the chat. I also provided my contact information in the chat if anyone has any follow-up comments or questions. So thank you again.